Again, as promised, you've got about 8 cards previewed in the last couple of days. Seemed like a pretty good chunk to jump in and do some quick takes. So what we've seen is the 2-card support for 4 of the 8 characters that are going to have 2-card support in the Heroes Clash set. So we've got a couple cards for Koda, we've got a couple cards for Ojiro, Shoji, and Stain. And so presumably the next couple days we'll get cards for the other 4 characters. But for now, ahead of this weekend, hop on. Talk about these ones real quick. So first up we have Command Pigeon Flock. This card's very interesting. It has some back alley haymaker at home energy, right? Where it's a 4-speed, 5 damage, 5 diff that's going to go get a foundation. Only instead of being limited to 0 diffs, you're limited to ally foundations, which do not have to be 0 difficulty. They will probably be better on average than your Z difficulty options. In return, it doesn't have stun, it doesn't have EX. You don't have the draw card option. But you do have this funky, probably Coda only kind of ability where you can discard momentum for some damage if you're Coda and you're playing that long string. Trying to think of if you're doing some Summon Dark Shadows stuff, you know, maybe then you could get this up to 3 or 4 damage, but for the most part, that's an ability that's not going to be used too terribly often. But even just playing this for the top one's still pretty good. We'll see one ally foundation is pretty compelling. I think if there's a second really interesting ally foundation, you could see some decks that are leading into this card a little bit. It does have the range keyword as well for the range theme. The 5 difficulty slot is tight on Chaos for sure, but I think, especially over time, I think we're probably going to see a lot of this card. I'm going to give it a nice 4 out of 5. Friend of Animals, so this is going to be, you know, one of the main targets, of course, for Pigeon Flock, first and foremost. Kind of wants you to be playing commit cost characters. If it's committed during the enhanced step, you get a couple speed. That's a nice little bonus. Worth a 3-5 on its own, maybe not really, but it also pops itself to give you a momentum. So clearly gets along very, you know, these two are an obvious combo, right? You play Pigeon Flock, oh, I don't have the momentum, that's fine, I'll go get Friend of Animals, I'll commit it to do my character's thing, and I'll do this, and I'll get damage, right? But outside of that, even if you're not running Flock, if you're running a character with commit costs, you're probably pretty interested in this card. You don't have any of the 3 diffs you want to run. I don't think it'll be everywhere. I don't even know, you know, depending on the options, it might even not be that present in Flock decks. But you'll probably see them together a lot. So it's a little weird to give Flock a 4 and then give this less than a 4, just because they'll probably go together a lot, and I think Flock's pretty good, but on its merits, I'm probably going to go ahead and give this a 3. I think it's going to be a relevant card. I don't think it'll be everywhere. It might not get played without Flock in particular. But, yeah, maybe. I don't know. It's hard. They're a package. It's kind of hard to rate them separately, right? Karate Chop is pretty neat. This has some Heroic Strike energy to it. So the 4 difficulty, 4 speed for 4 with the scaling stun on it. That is not exactly stun. It also hits a momentum. This is interesting. I was surprised to see how excited people were about a 4 mid 4 for 4-3. That is not often a line that anybody really, you know, for an effect that is ultimately just like some stun or whatever. I was surprised to see the feedback on this card. The Ojiro Hands is cute. It's basically for Ojiro 1 dot, but yeah, it maybe in some punch theme decks, Ojiro might play this as his mid, depending on what he's got going on. I don't think at the end of the day, you know, Heroic Strike kind of just shows up in All Might decks right now, and this is maybe going to be a little bit similar. It does have the much nicer block. Yeah, I don't want to waffle too much and care too much about these ratings. I'm just going to give it a 3. I don't think it's going to be, like, approaching staple tier, but it'll show up in some decks and it'll be really good when it does. Student of the Art. Probably a little character only. In Ojiro, it's obviously a snap 4x. You're playing this card in Ojiro 1,000,000% of the time for obvious reasons. For other characters... yeah, Probably not so much. We'll have to see. It basically, if you're a character that's really trying to scale with card pool count, you might play this, but the fact that you're going to have to pay for the progressive makes it really, really unlikely this is going to see a lot of play. So this is, I'm going to give this a 2 for being extremely niche. It'll be really good when it does show up. Obviously, I rated this card last time, right, when it showed up as the promo, so it'd be pretty funny to look back at that. It does... It seals the card, so yeah, it's basically character only. It's going to be great in Ojiro. But yeah. Pinnacle Tactics. This one is a little bit less shogi only. Certainly if you're shogi, you're forced to play this card if you're shogi 2 to try to make your character useful. I don't think these 2 cards are really enough to break shogi out of the C tier, but at least he'll play like a somewhat more respectable game. But, you know, I could be proven wrong. Anyway, on its face, this is a 4 high 6 breaker 1 block. It's got nice stats. It's got Fury and Slam, and Fury in particular might be a keyword that you want on some things. We don't have a whole lot that cares about slams just yet, but we might at some point. And the option of paying 2 health to make it a 4 high, you know, if you're willing to pay 2 health, you get a genuinely great statted attack out of this. So I could see this filling, you know, I have a couple slots in my deck. I just need an attack that's going to do some good damage, has some good stats. So this will fit into those slots pretty nicely, I think. So I think we will see it a little bit outside of shogi. Maybe not everywhere. 2 health is actually a real cost, right? It's not strictly an automatic 4 high 8. But you could have decks that want to pay health costs too, right? We're thinking about Endeavor decks with quick to act or whatever, right? So I think it's got some legs. Let's go have some legs. Window shopping. So my first reaction to Windows Shopping's form is like, this is the worst draw 1 card ever. Right? You look at the top card of your deck, you can play it as your next form. If you don't, you don't get the card. But technically, you know, you do get to see the top card of your deck. It's got a little bit of Destined for main. This is kind of the worst Destined ever. Right? You form, you look at the top card of your deck, and if this was Destined, you would draw it if it's an attack. In this case, you have to play it if it's an attack, or that's it. Yeah, it's a cool card. Unless you're doing things that give you tricks with, you know, form speed draw, there is some stuff where, like Award the Victor, which doesn't share symbols, or Celebrity Status, which doesn't share symbols, or stuff like that can pay you off if you're drawing cards at form speed. Outside of that, yeah, I don't know. Like, obviously Shoji's gonna play it, but I think people are gonna come away relatively disappointed in this card. It'll fit. I guess people like never stop playing League Interview, which I think is dramatically overplayed. But you know, for my purposes, I'm not playing a 2/5 form flip to do worse than drawing a card. We're gonna give that a 2 because we'll see playing Shoji, obviously. And Shoji, if you can peek the top of your deck, right, which Shoji gets to do, then that's a little bit better. Blood Moon Rending, this is one of the more exciting cards of this bunch. That combo enhance is extremely, extremely, extremely good. You're looking at your opponent's hand and peeling a card out of it is something that is so good. It is a once per game on Sero that really is driving a lot of the power level of that character. Downside, in this case, it has to be your 3rd attack. You have to be 3 attacks deep before you're doing this. And because this is going to be a 3 mid 7 by the time you're done with it, you know, this isn't necessarily the one you're trying to slam through. So you almost have to be on a 4 attack string turn. However, you know, late games that does happen. Usually if you're trying to close out a game, you are playing a string like that. And this is going to crack that door open for it. So I think this card is really good. I think it's going to have... You're going to see decks going weapon for, you know, obviously off of Void, you get all of Eraserhead 2 starter cards too. But you might see some Evil and Order decks trying to lean into the weapon suite to try to get this card in the fold as a late game, you know, wall breaking tool. We'll see how the meta shakes up in terms of the raw card draw. Obviously, if there's still a million, you know, passing the torch decks or whatever, trying to shed cards out of your rival's hands, not that compelling of a lockdown. You know, this is definitely going to work kind of strategy. But, you know, even its base stats, if you're playing it non-combo, you're allowed to just play this as a 3 mid 7, by the way. Right? And that is also just fine. So I think this card's going to be pretty popular. I'm going to give it a 4. We'll wait to see if we start seeing some evil May decks, if, you know, once again, if evil ever finds some speed hate. But, you know, that said, I talk about evil speed hate a lot, but Kirishima too, just by not quite having speed hate but readying some foundations, is kind of making do, right? And the last one here is Influencing the Youth. This kind of effect is usually pretty good. I don't think form remove is too costly for something like this. You're not going to snap 4x it, but I think if you're playing these symbols and you're not quite sure how you're going to navigate longer games, you can probably pop a couple of these in. And worst case scenario, you have, you know, sort of the worst user. Well, worst case scenario is it's like removing a irrefutable for the non-symbol enhance, which I have certainly done a lot. And so that rate's fine, and obviously if you get the good rate where you're double tapping something or triple tapping something, then it's really, really good. Not so good early, kind of only has that one mode, doesn't have any defensive uses, so I don't think it's going to be too much more than a 2x. But 2xing cards like this is you know, very often the difference between, you know, winning a late game and just kind of floundering and not being able to do anything. So I think this is also going to be a pretty influential card, as it were. And I'm going to give that one a 4. Yeah, nice and quick. We'll wrap things up here. The stain symbols, the Evil Order Void, certainly the winners out of this batch. And I'm really interested to see where this ally package ends up leading. Because if this set has leaning into allies and all these random back page cards, this could be sort of a new deck archetype, sort of. Coming in out of left field, really. You know, I know people kind of expected there'd be some ally stuff because Tokoyami 2 being what he was, but... And I guess, you know, we knew Kodo was in the set. But it's sort of an interesting start to an engine here between these two cards. Yeah, that'll do it for tonight. We'll be back again once we have another, you know, 8-12, however many cards to talk about. And maybe a news post between now and then, depending on what's going on. Alright, take care, have a good day.